I'm trying to escape from some guy who had me chained up in his basement.
He had you chained in his basement? Where are you calling from?
I don't know. He's after me.
Izzy, I need you to go somewhere safe. If you can run up to somebody's house. Where are you at right now? Are you able to get away?
Help me. Help me.
That chilling 911 call came on November 25, 2019. Police quickly tracked the location and found the victim visibly traumatized. He had sprinted to a nearby house for help. The neighbor who opened his door described the scene.
A gentleman pulls up in my driveway in a silver SUV, and he gets out, and he's wearing the same getup this guy's wearing, which is a leather skirt and a couple of belts crossing her body, no shoes on, no shirt. This kid grabs my arm and clutches behind me. Keep him away from me, keep him away from me.
Too shaken and embarrassed to explain, the victim kept his mouth shut. Police simply dismissed the incident, thinking it was a sexual experiment gone wrong. But the story would twist into something far more bizarre, involving honey traps and cannibalism. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated. Now let's dive in. On December 24, 2019, 25-year-old Kevin Bacon left his Michigan home around 5:15 p.m. He was excited. He'd been chatting with a man earlier that day, and they'd made plans to meet up. Kevin texted his roommate, "I'll be out for a while. He's inviting some other people too. It's like a small party." Kevin was buzzing with nervous anticipation. Meeting new people wasn't his usual thing, but this felt like an adventure. He even asked his roommate to cover for him if his mom called, reassuring them it was nothing to worry about. At 6:20 p.m., the messages stopped. Kevin went silent. No texts, no calls, nothing. At first, no one panicked. Kevin had mentioned his plans and everyone figured he was just enjoying the evening. Maybe he'd turned off his phone to make a good impression. Maybe he will call the next morning. But the next morning was Christmas, and Kevin didn't show up for breakfast with his family. This was completely unlike him. When Kevin's friends told his parents everything they knew, their worry turned into fear. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Kevin's parents immediately filed a missing persons report. But there was a huge problem. Kevin hadn't shared many details about his plans. No names, no specific locations. His phone had been turned off since the previous night, making it impossible to track his movements. Word of Kevin's disappearance spread quickly to his extended family who gathered at his parents' house. Kevin wasn't just any 25-year-old. He was a talented hairstylist known for his creativity and vibrant personality. His confidence and openness made him stand out, and his sudden silence was jarring. A family member said, "Kevin always cared so much about others. He used to talk about mental health, LGBTQ+ community, and sexual violence prevention. His passion was helping people." The police worked tirelessly to find him, starting with his call records. But there were no suspicious or unknown calls leading up to his disappearance. Whoever Kevin met must have communicated with him through other means. If it was a simple invitation, why all the secrecy? The next step was to review the neighborhood's CCTV footage. Kevin was last seen walking down the road and getting into his car, but after that, he vanished. The footage didn't show where he went, leaving investigators puzzled. However, the cameras gave them one crucial lead: Kevin's car. The vehicle was eventually found abandoned near Seymour and Miller Roads in Shiawassee County. Kevin's phone and wallet were still in the car, scattered amidst what looked like a rushed departure. A bag of clothing suggested he planned to stay somewhere overnight, but one thing was missing: the car key. Despite a thorough search, police found no sign of a struggle, no clues pointing to where Kevin might have gone. The question on everyone's mind was haunting. Why didn't he bring his phone? Where could he be? Was he safe? Kevin's family, alongside authorities, sprang into action, organizing a search effort surrounding the abandoned car. They scoured nearby streets, fields, and woods. With each passing moment, the urgency grew stronger. Time was slipping away, and with it, so was hope. Authorities turned their focus to Kevin's phone, hoping it might hold the key to his disappearance. They quickly found an app called Grindr, a platform for gay men to connect, whether for dating or casual encounters. What police were about to uncover would take them down a far darker path than they had ever imagined. Working with the cybercrime unit, investigators gained access to Kevin's Grindr account. As they meticulously sifted through messages and profiles, one name stood out: Alas Cas Lucas. Kevin had been in frequent contact with this person. Investigators quickly discovered Alas Cas Lucas' true identity was Mark Latunsky, who had multiple disturbing offenses, raising serious alarms about Kevin's safety. Born in 1969, Mark Latunsky had once seemed to have a promising future. He attended Central Michigan University and later earned a master's degree in chemistry from Iowa State University. By 2001, he was a successful chemist, married to a woman named Emily, and together they had 4 children. In 2010, cracks in his life began to show when he was diagnosed with multiple mental health disorders, including chronic major depression with psychotic features, anxiety, paranoid schizophrenia, and borderline personality disorder. By 2014, his instability became undeniable when he walked into a police station and bizarrely claimed that he had murdered himself. Despite his troubling history, Mark remarried in 2016 to Jamie Arnold. However, their marriage quickly fell apart. Jamie later filed for divorce, citing Mark's refusal to take his medication, his violent tendencies, and his disturbing sexual fantasies. Police soon uncovered even more disturbing details. Mark, now 50 years old, was no stranger to violent encounters. He was known to frequent escort sites, offering his services in exchange for money. Even more alarming, 2 911 calls had originated from the same area where Mark lived. The first one was made on October 10, 2018, 2.5 months before Kevin Bacon disappeared. The caller was a 48-year-old man.
I woke up in the fucking basement, okay? Chained in the basement with a leather thing on my ankle, and I cut it with the butcher knife that I have in my fucking hand, excuse my French. And I met this guy. I'm bad, he was cute, he hit on me. I know, we went out to the car, we talked, we went to the store, had a soda. I woke up in the basement.
Okay.
He obviously drugged me.
Do you know what his name was?
No.
No?
And I don't want to pursue it. I want to go home.
6 weeks later, on November 25th, another distressing call came from the same area. It was a 29-year-old man running out of Mark's house, wearing a leather skirt.
Charlotte County 911.
I'm trying to get away from some creepy guy. I'm trying to get in his basement.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm trying to escape from some guy who had me chained up in his basement.
He had you chained in his basement? Where are you calling from?
I don't know. He's after me.
The victim sprinted to a nearby house for help, while Mark Latunsky was right behind him. When officers arrived, Mark downplayed the situation, insisting that they were fooling around in his basement, doing some playful activities. Mark chased the man because he was wearing Mark's leather kilt, which was worth $300. Mark simply wanted it back. Despite the urgency and the man's obvious terror, police let Mark go. 1 month later, Kevin Bacon disappeared. On the morning of December 28th, police arrived at Mark Latunsky's home. He tried to deceive them by providing a false name, but eventually admitted who he was. Police explained they were investigating Kevin Bacon's disappearance and presented a search warrant for his home. To their surprise, Mark was welcoming and even engaged in small talk. One officer recalled, Mark appeared very calm and collected, not nervous whatsoever. His Christmas tree was still up. We were talking about that. As officers searched the house, nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. However, their attention was drawn to a locked door in the basement. Something about it felt off. They forced it open, and what they found inside was beyond their worst fears. A sickening smell filled the air as they stepped into the hidden room. Hanging from the ceiling by his ankles was Kevin's lifeless, naked body. His throat had been slit, and his back was covered in deep stab wounds. The brutality of the scene was overwhelming. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Kevin's body bore signs of unspeakable mutilation. His genitals had been removed, and beneath his body lay a dark, dried pool of blood. A grim testament to his final moments. In the eerie silence of that basement, the officers stood frozen, the weight of the horror sinking in. One of them managed to radio in.
Central, this is most likely a Terry. We're going to check this house.
Mark Latunsky was arrested on the spot. The nightmare they had uncovered was finally coming to light, but for Kevin's loved ones, the reality of his tragic fate was only beginning to set in. Mark was brought in for questioning, and as detectives began unraveling his twisted psyche, they were horrified by the dark, disturbing nature of his fantasies. However, they had no idea just how deep the darkness ran within the man sitting across from them.
Is Mark David Latunsky.
Okay.
And that is not my legal name.
Oh, it isn't?
No. That is a stolen identity. Mark David Latunsky was last, or at least the last record that I have of Mark David Latunsky was 1972.
So what is the name that you prefer, or that you use?
My name is Edgar Thomas Hill.
At this point, Mark, now claiming to be Edgar Thomas Hill, insisted that Mark Latunsky had been a stolen identity. His erratic statements, coupled with a history of delusions and hallucinations, pointed to clear signs of schizophrenia. His ex-wife revealed that it began after his father's stroke, a traumatic event that left a lasting impact on him. Since then, Mark had convinced himself of bizarre fantasies, even believing that he was his mother's brother, and his family had hidden his true identity to steal his inheritance. These delusions forced investigators to adapt their approach. They focus on the legal consequences he would face. If Mark was declared not guilty by reason of insanity, he could avoid prison and be sent to a psychiatric facility. Investigators needed to determine his mental state at the time of the crime. When asked what he did for a living, Mark admitted he just massages. Man can't guarantee sex. But you want to spend your time with me, boom, here's your price, and I'll have a good time with it. I charge $200 an hour, $1,500 a day. Mark was proud of his job, saying, "I'm doing it for honest money." His bizarre story took another strange turn when he claimed he belonged to a royal family, alleging that his identity had been hidden from him for years. His mother had died on the very day he would have come of age and discovered the truth about his lineage. But when detectives asked, "If you truly believe you're royalty, why do you need to work?" Mark shut up. Detectives suspected whether he was fabricating his condition to avoid accountability or if his mind was truly fractured beyond repair. When investigators confronted Mark with evidence of his interactions with Kevin, his demeanor changed. Mark claimed Kevin had willingly agreed to everything, even to his death.
After we sat and made an agreement about what was going to happen, we made the agreement, and he was supposed to disappear, be gone.
Mark insisted that his actions were part of a pre-arranged plan, something he and Kevin had discussed in great detail. He was trying to help Kevin in a way that would make it easier for his loved ones. However, his version of events was filled with contradictions and delusions.
We met, physically met, in Swartz Creek. And he says, "You know what, can I text a friend and say, you know what, I'm just gonna be out, and you know, whatever we blabbered about." And he says, "Okay, now that I've sent it, I'm gonna turn my phone off." Okay.
That was all at the parking lot?
That was all still in the parking lot.
Okay.
Do you know what store? Was it parking lot?
No, it was just a parking lot there on Grand River not Grand River, Miller Road in Swartz Creek.
When asked about his vehicle, Mark identified it as a Hyundai Santa Fe. He claimed Kevin voluntarily got in, sat in the back, and prepared himself for what was about to happen. Mark claimed that Kevin had confided in him about his struggles with depression and thoughts of self-harm. However, Kevin's family painted an entirely different picture. They described him as full of life, excited about his future, and making detailed plans for it. He had been eager to meet Mark, looking forward to the experience. He wasn't trying to end his life. Michigan State Police revealed that Mark and Kevin had been communicating for several days before their meeting. Their conversations involved shared interests in erotic activities. Kevin had one specific request. He wanted Mark to keep him safe during their encounter and to ensure he got home safely. Mark had agreed, but his actions would prove otherwise. In a matter-of-fact tone, Mark described the events leading to Kevin's gruesome end.
I could slit his throat. Here's the knife. I could do it that way. And I couldn't do it. I said, I don't know if that would be painless. And we debated it, all of the different ways that I said, I have a sword upstairs, but it's dull. It wouldn't work. I was afraid I would hurt him. And he said, and I did. And he says, I'm on the back side because he's laying on the floor and it would be across the room and he had his head facing the east wall. There was a fair amount of blood. Of course, it was a matter of doing what I needed to do to complete what I told him I would do. Turn him into something that would produce life. And that's what I was in the process of doing.
Where's the knife now?
It is upstairs in because I cleaned it off.
When detectives asked about the murder weapon, Mark calmly described it as a hunter's knife, with a black blade, a black and gray handle. What made the situation even more disturbing was Mark's casual approach to the entire event. He spoke as if he were describing a complicated physics project, discussing the logistics of the act with an unsettling level of detail. Despite his claims that Kevin had persuaded him to assist in ending his life, one crucial question lingered. Kevin was stabbed in his spinal cord, which was extremely painful. Why would he choose such a slow and excruciating method if he truly wanted a painless death? Mark explained that after Kevin was unconscious, he tried to speed things up to end his suffering. Mark said, "I knew the stabbing wasn't enough, so I slit his throat and hung him by his feet. That way, the blood would drain faster." However, the most chilling revelation came when Mark described the moment he decided to make use of Kevin's body.
I was going to eat part of him, and I did. It was the new moon, and honoring my word to what I said I would do.
Was that his wishes? Is that the main reason why you did it?
It was the discussion. Like wherever, whatever is consumable is consumable. So I said, I will eat you. And he says, okay, because part of my culture is that if you have an honorable death, then you have to tell somebody before you pass 3 houses.
Detectives allowed Mark to recount the details leading up to Kevin's murder, without interrupting or steering the conversation, ensuring that his confession wouldn't be seen as coerced. But what Mark revealed went beyond their worst fears. It was no longer just a murder case. It was cannibalism. However, Mark spoke with a bizarre sense of justification, believing that his actions were permissible under American law. This raised a critical question. Was Mark legally insane at the time of the crime? Legally speaking, if a person suffers from a severe mental disorder and cannot comprehend the wrongfulness of their actions, they could be found not guilty by reason of insanity. And from the way Mark spoke, investigators feared he might fit that profile. Mark continued his chilling narrative, describing how he and Kevin had spent the night in the basement, engaging in what he called their unconventional activities. Mark revealed how he had brought out chains and ropes, restraining Kevin in what he claimed was a consensual act. The ropes, which were originally used for other suspensions, immediately caught the investigators' attention. They asked if the ropes had been set up specifically for Kevin.
Did you just put the ropes up for Kevin Bacon, or had they been there for a couple of weeks before Kevin Bacon?
No, that they had never, that those ropes had, no, those were all done that night. And in fact, before he got there, that rope, I mean, we tailored it for some of the stuff that we were doing. Is that the ropes as you saw them today, that's all of that, because I've been working with it for the past couple of days to, you know, I mean, whenever I can to try to get everything, I was just trying to get everything right so that I could.
It was clear that Mark had meticulously prepared for what he claimed was Kevin's request. Detectives continued to press Mark on his macabre plans for Kevin's remains.
So when you were talking about what Kevin wanted and you were going to potentially use his bones for tulips, where were you planning on putting his bones, I guess? I don't understand. Talking like, where were you going to plant that stuff?
Actually, he wanted me to get and the tulip bulbs off to his family somehow. If I have the ability to get his family from the south side of I-69 to the north side, if that comes about, then they're going to be on the north side somewhere. And if they're on the north side, if tulips show up with a bag of here's the tulips, and this is what you put on them.
So where did you read about that? Like, how did you know that? Like, I have no knowledge. Like, how do you know?
With any growth of plants, but tulips in particular, like bone meal. But the big thing about tulips is that they are the starvation grade plant. So when you can't get potatoes at the grocery store, you've got the tulips sitting in the ground, and you're the only one who knows where they're at.
Mark claimed that Kevin had made bizarre requests before his death. He wanted his bones to be used as fertilizer for tulips. Mark admitted to having researched about tulips and confidently said only the person who planted them knows where to dig. The detectives were left speechless by the level of thought and planning Mark had put into his disturbing scheme. But there was more. Mark admitted to using Kevin's remains in his cooking, likening it to dishes he had tried before.
And you said you put Worcestershire on them.
I put the Lee and Perrins Worcestershire sauce on it. Okay. And that's just, you know, the griddle is right there, and I mean, because that's how I normally eat them. I mean, I had a friend from Ohio that came up, and I tried some of the recipes with Rocky Mountain oysters, and they just produced so much volume.
In addition to the dehydrator Mark purchased to turn Kevin's muscles into beef, he mentioned his regular consumption of Rocky Mountain oysters, a dish made from testicles. But this time, instead of the traditional ingredients, Mark had chosen Kevin. This shocking confession left detectives deeply disturbed. Despite showing symptoms of mental illness, Mark's methodical responses and calculated choices raised serious questions. Was he truly insane, or was he faking it? Investigators quickly gathered overwhelming evidence to move forward with charges. However, Mark had a different strategy. In January 2020, his legal team entered a plea of insanity, presenting an array of medical records, court documents, and expert testimonies to support their claim. They argued that Mark's schizophrenia had clouded his ability to understand the wrongfulness of his actions, making him unfit to stand trial. Initially, the court accepted the plea. But 5 months later, a judge overturned the ruling, deciding that Mark's mental state could be stabilized with treatment. Against his attorney's wishes, Mark was ordered to undergo a rigorous 15-month rehabilitation program to restore his mental competency. In September 2022, after 2.5 years of legal battles following Kevin Bacon's tragic murder in Michigan, Mark Latunsky finally faced the courtroom. To the shock of many, he pleaded guilty to the charges of first-degree murder and mutilation, bringing an unexpected sense of closure to the long legal process.
Did you use a knife to stab Mr. Bacon?
Yes, I did.
Did you know that stabbing Mr. Bacon with a knife would most certainly create a very high risk of death or great bodily harm to Mr. Bacon?
Yes, I did.
After Mr. Bacon was dead, did you remove part of his body, specifically his testicles?
Yes, I did.
Did you move those testicles to the kitchen?
Yes, I did.
Did you do so without legal authorization, meaning you were not doing so to embalm Mr. Bacon's body or to do a proper post-mortem examination?
No, I didn't.
Ignoring the strategic legal advice of his attorneys, Mark remained resolute in his choice to plead guilty, insisting that he was fully aware of his actions. The courtroom reached its climax when Mark was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Kevin's loved ones, this verdict marked the end of a painful journey, finally delivering the justice they had been longing for. In the aftermath of the trial, advocates emphasized the importance of never blaming the victim. One advocate said, "As someone who works with survivors of violence, it's crucial to remember that it was not Kevin's fault. We can take all the precautions in the world, but at the end of the day, it's the perpetrator who bears full responsibility." Before we close this video, we want to extend our deepest condolences to Kevin Bacon's family and loved ones. His life was taken far too soon, and his memory will continue to live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved him. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Mark Latunsky killed Kevin because Kevin wished to die and asked him to do it? Or were there hidden aspects of the story that have yet to come to light? Please share your opinions in the comments. If there's a case you're interested in, let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.